Welcome to this special Garage Movie Reviews. I am joined by my brother Matt. Matt is a huge hockey fan, and he has a YouTube channel called Matt Piano Covers, where he covers songs and movie soundtracks and stuff like that. I'll link that in the bio down below. I decided to have my brother join me because he knows hockey way more than me. He also does this channel called The Sin Bin. So, let me introduce
I sort of abandoned that one, but I'm a huge hockey connoisseur. I love hockey. You see me, I'm dressed like a hockey player. I grew a beard like a hockey player. I got the salad going like a hockey player. I'm not going to lie, I even smell like a hockey player. I haven't showered in weeks. So I'm really ready for this movie review. We're going to be reviewing Slapshot.
Yeah, we're celebrating the start of the NHL season here. Real quick, who do you have on the back of your jersey?
Oh, right now I'm wearing the Blackhawks, and I got the Johnny Taves going. A little bit of Johnny Taves action. Oh, it's just my ass?
Yeah.
It's okay. They'll see my ass. That's a bonus for them, too.
Who is on my jersey? I didn't even see. I just stole one of your jerseys.
That's Brendan Gallagher. I believe is how you pronounce it.
Is he related to one of the Gallagher
brothers?
brothers?
I don't know about that shit.
I need to be myself.
But I can't wait to review this movie. I think it's the first really good hockey movie that ever came out, so I can't wait for that.
It's a fair assumption. So I was around you last season when the whole COVID fiasco took over the NHL. You kind of lost interest in last season. It kind of didn't feel the same.
Yeah.
Are you hyped for this upcoming NHL season?
Yeah, well, I still watched it, it was still somewhat entertaining, but like you said, it wasn't the same. Am I hyped for this year's season? Absolutely. I mean, it's going to be completely different, the division realignments, and it's going to make for some really entertaining hockey and some really cool rivalries. So, I'm really, really pumped for the season.
All right, cool. So, let's talk Slapshot now. So, for those of you who don't know, this is a very important movie to the NHL. Kind of became an anthem of the NHL, if that applies to movies. Anyway, follows Paul Newman. Paul Newman is an aging player and coach of this small-town hockey club.
Yep.
And
club is Charlottetown Chiefs.
The Charlottetown Chiefs.
Yeah.
So this hockey club is going out of business. The paper mill of the town is out. So people are starting to go broke and not being able to go to these hockey games. A lot of shit is going down. And he realizes that if this team plays dirty, they will sell more seats and therefore become more likely to get picked up by another team.
It's a pretty simplistic plot, but some might say it's a really, really effective movie, and I guess we can get in the review, right?
Yeah, so just overall, give me your overall thoughts on the film.
Alright, so overall thoughts, like you sort of touched upon, I think it's a really important movie. I think its importance sort of surpasses its overall quality. And I'll get a little bit into that later, but what I mean by that is that this movie is hailed by people as the godfather of hockey movies. If you ask certain hockey players, certain, like radio hosts, they'll all point back to this movie. It's sort of like their mecca of entertainment, I guess. And in that regards, I really liked it. I also really like the raunchiness. It's a very raunchy movie. I'm sure we'll start talking about that too. I will say, though, I'm not sure how well it'll hold up with millennials and just people nowadays as just a standalone film, regardless of its cultural impact. And those are sort of my overall first initial thoughts.
Yeah, I share the same thoughts as you. Overall, I love this movie. We talked about this in respects of an NHL movie or a hockey movie. I think it surpasses that. I think this is one of the best sports films ever made. Even alongside Rocky and all those, which I know a lot of people are fond of the Rocky movies and all these fighting movies. This is probably in the top sports movies for me, but it's not a genre I particularly go to.
Okay.
So
you see, I'm the complete opposite. I absolutely love this genre. Nothing gets me pumped like a good sports movie. And sort of like I said, in terms of cultural impact, I'm totally on board with you. It's one of the best. But in terms of standalone movie, I don't even think it's in my top 3 hockey movies, shockingly enough.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
All right. So, real quick, let's just talk about a bit more of the positives here before we start talking about our problems with the film. What are things you liked about this film?
Okay, so for my positives, and I'll start with the biggest positive I can give this movie, the Hanson brothers. Now, when I say Hanson brothers, you probably think of these three long-haired teens singing boo-wop. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about these nerdy brothers, three of them. They love drinking soda.
Hey, I want a soda.
They love taping foils to their knuckles.
What are you guys doing? Putting on the foil. Every game. Yeah, you want some?
And they go out on the ice. They look like complete buffoons. They have these big nerdy glasses, and they're just destroying everyone.
These guys are a fucking disgrace.
They're hitting, they're punching. About 3/4 of what they do isn't even legal, not just in hockey, but I think in society. They would get arrested. And just seeing those three, they're a complete mockery, a complete caricature of what a hockey player is, and I absolutely loved it. In fact, if you guys are sort of hesitant on watching this movie, I would say watch it just based on the Hanson brothers. I love those guys. I bought a Hanson jersey, number 17. That's how much I like them. So that would be my first positive.
Just to add on that, I think the ensemble as a whole is a really good ensemble. Your favorite characters are the Hanson brothers. I really like the French-Canadian goalie.
Yeah,
the movie
he's good
opens
too.
up with an interview with him, and he's explaining the rules to hockey, probably for audiences who weren't familiar with hockey at the time. But just him talking about the hockey rules, what's an icing, what's an offside, what's a high sticking.
And for a trip also, like that, and for hook like this, and for spear, like that. All bad.
Bad.
You do that, you go to the box, 2 minutes by yourself, and you feel shame, and then you get free.
The way he describes it. And I've had a problem with how French Canadians are portrayed in film, because it's not
Authentic.
Yeah, it's not really authentic, exactly. I'm thinking of movies like The Love Guru had Justin Timberlake.
Did someone order the special Quebec pizza? Like in the porno.
And recently, the movie Tusk, was it called? The
Tusk,
Walrus?
yeah.
They had Johnny Depp trying to do a French-Canadian accent, and it's not really all that accurate.
I'm Guy Lapointe, that is my name, Guy Lapointe, and I spent 20 years as the inspector of the Sûreté du Québec.
This character, he steals the show to me. He's my favorite character. And different people will get out of this movie having a different favorite character. As you can see, he likes the Hanson brothers. I like the French-Canadian goalie. There's one character that we're a little iffy on.
Oh, okay, Mo. Okay,
Yeah, Mo is
guy.
like a little too creepy. I don't think people will walk out of the...
I thought you were talking about the main character, but Mo too. He was really creepy. This guy, he walks around the locker room naked. He has this weird crack body, and I think when he opens his locker, there's these like magazines and like pictures of ladies. Was that him?
Yeah.
And he just loves talking about women's breasts, women's asses.
I don't like the way they cover their jugs all up with the feathers, Reg?
It won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I will say, having been in locker rooms, having seen locker rooms, there are characters like that. And, just to touch about the goalie, I don't know if he was actually French-Canadian or not, but having spent time around the French-Canadians, he's really authentic. He really sounds like one. And, like Justin Timberlake, Johnny Depp, they really went over the top. And they ended up not sounding French-Canadian at all, but, this goalie really sounds French-Canadian.
Yeah. That brings us into another topic, which is the language. You talked about how this generation won't really feel attached to this film because there's really, even for the time, the language was very controversial, and a lot of people didn't like this movie, people that were associated with the NHL, just because it gave the NHL a bad impression, very violent, a lot of foul language, uses of the other F word and the other D word.
You know, your son looks like a fag to me. You better get married again, because he's going to wind up with somebody's cock in his mouth before he can say Jack Robinson.
How dare you? How dare you?
What did you think about all that?
I mean, I personally liked it. Like, putting hockey aside, I just really like raunchy comedy movies. I like fart jokes. I like F words, that type of stuff. I think it's really funny. So just hockey aside, those are my impressions. I totally understand if it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people might be more sensitive than others. So if you don't want to watch the movie because of that, I totally understand it. I would have to say, though, in terms of a hockey movie, it really fits the hockey culture because hockey's a really raunchy sport. If you go on the ice, people are swearing at each other. They're calling each other's the F words, the D words. So I can't really see a hockey movie without it. It wouldn't be true, in my opinion. But, you know, the NHL getting upset, I get it. You know, they don't want to have a negative image tied to their sport. But at the same time, it happens in the NHL. It happens in the AHL. Almost everywhere that there's hockey, you see that type of stuff. It's a very vulgar sport.
Yeah. And one thing people fail to understand is that when there's this kind of language in a locker room, in a hockey locker room or other sports, I'm assuming, it's almost like a sign of affinity. It's like you get along with someone so well, you don't mind calling them the most nastiest language you can think of, because it's at the end of the day. And that relationship is more important in hockey, even more so than other sports, because your teammates are basically your bodyguards. They're the ones that are going to get into fights with you, and it's almost like gladiators. So I feel like having a hockey movie without that language, it just kind of doesn't accurately portray that.
Yeah, the director, I can't remember if it was the director or the writer of the movie. Her brother used to play in the minor leagues, and a lot of the story of Slapshot was based on his experiences, and he actually plays Ogie Oglethorpe, so he has a little cameo. But all that to say that these are real things that are happening in the movie. The only thing that's a little, you would never see that, is when they're having these stick fights where they're trying to poke each other's eye out. That's the only thing that's a little, well, not the only thing, but one of the things that's over the top. But, you know, the interactions in the locker rooms, the interactions on the ice, the fights, that's very well common in hockey. So I really appreciated that.
So you talk about this movie drawing a lot from real life. Was there actually a hockey player who would jerk off in the penalty box?
Also, we're getting into spoilers?
Yeah, this is a spoiler.
Spoiler, there was a player that jerked off in the penalty box.
Reg, that reminds me. I was coaching in Omaha in 1948, and Eddie Shore sends me this guy that's a terrible masturbator, you know, couldn't control himself. Well, he would get deliberate penalties so he could get into the penalty box all by himself, and damned if he wouldn't, you know.
Just overall, I think this movie has a lot of memorable moments like that beginning I was talking about. What are some of your favorite moments?
I really like anything involving the Hanson brothers, but if I had to piece one specific moment, and again, we're doing spoilers?
Yeah.
Okay, so in hockey, before the game actually starts, each team goes on either side of the ice, and they're sort of just skating around, you know, getting warmed up, shooting a little bit on their goalie. And there's this really good scene where the Charlottetown Islanders, or not the Islanders, the Chiefs, they're playing against their opponent teams, and the players are skating around the ice, and one of the Hanson brothers, for absolutely no reason, decides to clothesline one of the opposing players, and this sparks the biggest brawl you've ever seen in your whole life.
To stop it because there are no officials on the ice.
And remember, this is all before the actual game started. And so they go to sing the anthem before the game, and everyone's just full of blood. And it looks horrible, and I absolutely loved it.
This movie takes place in the 70s, or maybe even before that. I'm not too sure what the specific date of the movie is, but just that time period it lends itself really well to hockey. Seeing those old goalie masks, like the Jason mask, seeing like having their hair flowing, like because they didn't have to wear helmets back then. I feel like when you make a hockey movie and you have it take place in that time period, it lends itself better to the sport than if you have it take place in modern day. That's just like a personal preference, I guess.
Other positives, I would say, well, anything involving a fight or a stick check, I absolutely love that. I'm on board. In hockey, the most entertaining parts, as one Don Cherry would say, fans only stand up for goals and fights. And this movie doesn't have a lot of goals, but it does have a lot of fights, and I loved everything involving that. The action, I think for the time was really good. And one thing I really liked is that you could see that the actors are actually skating, especially the main character. I'm forgetting his name. I apologize. But there's a scene at the end where he's stripping down and he's doing all of his skating, and it's really good work. I could see that they got training. I would say the one who has the least skating experience was probably Paul Newman.
Yeah.
Because you see less wide shots of him skating, but it was still pretty well done. The only thing I wasn't a fan of with the action was the quick cuts. I mean, there would be a scene where a guy shoots and 1 second later it cuts to another, whatever happening on the ice, and sometimes that's hard to follow.
At the time, film equipment was a lot bigger and more bulky. So because of that, you watch it today and you're like, oh, it's like shaky and kind of hard to follow what's going on. But for the time, you gotta think they had these big bulky cameras and stuff like that, and we're on the ice moving along with these players. So it is an accomplishment in its own right. So do you have any negatives with the film?
Yeah, I have quite a few negatives actually, and I think you said at some point this movie has a lot of great moments. And I couldn't agree with that more because I watched this movie quite a long time ago when I was younger. And as an adult, before rewatching it, I remembered all of these great moments and separately, sort of. But I think when pieced together in a movie, I realized that there was several pacing issues. And I think the pacing for this movie is not quite that good. There's some moments where I hate to say it, I really hate to say it, but I was sort of looking at my watch and saying like, okay, this scene is sort of dragging, this scene is sort of boring, and that would be one of my negatives. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I kind of share those thoughts, but I'm a bit more used to it, I think, because when you
watch boring movies.
Exactly, I watch a lot of boring movies, but I feel like by modern comedy standards, this is a very slow movie, and I feel like back in the 70s, you kind of had to have a plot and those emotional beats. It wasn't until like maybe the 90s where comedies just said, fuck it, let's have like just a ton of raunchy comedy and not focus on the plot at all. And the plot in this does get a little slow, especially when it comes to that dancing character, and there's his wife and he's having troubles with their relationship and stuff like that. And
they were such a big bummer. I hate to say it. Every time they're on screen, like I was like, oh my god. Like, this is a hockey movie. This should be fun. I should be watching it and getting pumped. I shouldn't be watching it and feel miserable and depressed. And I hate to say it, but the overall atmosphere, I forgot it being this gray. Like, the environments, the way it's shot, it's just very dark and gray. And I get it. It is a comedy. But I think at its core, it's sort of a little bit of a drama because there's a lot of bad things happening. The steel mill is closing. Everyone's going to lose their jobs. The hockey team isn't doing well. They're going to be sold. It's a very dark comedy, I would say. But I think that there wasn't enough laughs to compensate for those other darker moments. So it just made me feel a little bit cold inside, a little bit sad. I don't know about you, but that was my opinion.
Yeah, that's I share those thoughts as well. We're usually polar opposites when it comes to movies.
Yeah.
I think for this film, we're on the same page. I think my enjoyment of it was a little more than yours, which is ironic because he's the hockey fan. But I think overall the positives do outweigh the negatives. It's just when you watch it with the lens of comedy nowadays, it's hard to follow this movie. Goon, on the other hand, did adapt that hockey feel to a modern audience a lot better.
You could definitely see the improvements with the time, and please, if you're thinking of watching this movie, just keep in mind it's not meant to be like a ha-ha comedy movie. It is probably marketed as a comedy, but like I said, it's more so a dark comedy, and there won't be many belly laughs, and the movie isn't necessarily trying to be funny. It's not that they're making jokes and they're not landing, it's that there's not always jokes. There's several periods without even jokes. It's just a lot of serious stuff, so keep that in mind. I will say, though, I wasn't the biggest fan of the story, and I can't give them the benefit of the doubt here being an older movie because there's some older movies that have done it better. I think that in terms of a sports movie, there were several moments where I was sort of confused, like where exactly are the Chiefs in the standings? Are they near the playoffs? Are they near the championship? How many games are left? Like, what I needed something to root for. And I don't necessarily feel the movie did a good job of always conveying that.
A lot of that, too, is because it doesn't have the traditional format of another sports movie. Here, the objective of the team is that they just want to get bought by another team. Mm-hmm. So the focus is more, let's try to get as many butts in the seats as possible. And it doesn't have, like, this, like, final boss and more structure like a Rocky movie does. Yeah. And I wish it kind of did have that structure. Because the ending of this movie, it's basically a brawl that gets interrupted by one of the characters dancing, and that didn't feel like a fulfilling ending to me. Yeah. I would have much preferred, like, okay, let's try to not be dirty and be good, and they actually managed to win the game. I would have rather just it sounds like a cornier ending, but just a more traditional ending, I guess, would have been better.
Just going back to the dancing character, too, there's a scene in the movie where Dunlap, which is Paul Newman's character, he's telling his teammate, we got to go out there and we got to fight, and we don't really care about winning. All we care about is putting on a show and, getting asses in the seats and fighting. And that character is just like, no, I won't fight for you.
I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna goon it up for you.
No?
Nope.
I'll bench you.
I'll take my chances.
As a hockey fan and as a movie fan, I guess, I watched that and it just crushed my soul. And I'm like, dude, he's putting his body on the... How old is he in that movie? He's got, gray hair. He's putting his body on the line. The least you can do is try to follow him. And that character really did not... Him and his girlfriend really did not work for me.
I would love to see a re-edit of this film, but just with less of those two characters and more of Paul Newman.
Yeah. And just a little bit other negative details, which I think are a little bit nitpicks. The ADR was horrible.
Yeah.
There's scenes where there's a hockey play going on, and you just hear this voice booming into the stereo, and it sounds fake.
I attribute a lot of that because of the fact that hockey rinks have a lot of echo.
Yeah.
You have no other choice but putting ADR.
Well, and I don't know if you realize, but there's scenes where they're in bars, and just everyone's talking at the same time, and there's a lot of, cheering and background noise, and sometimes I had trouble, hearing who was saying what, because everyone was just talking at the same time, and, yeah, I'm not so much of a fan of that. It sounds like I'm overly negative. I think overall I like this movie. Do I think it's the greatest hockey movie ever? Probably not, but I will say it's the most influential one because, like we touched upon, it's really the first good hockey movie, the movie that put hockey on the map, so to speak, and it had some great cultural impact. You pointed out how much Semi-Pro is similar to it.
Yeah, I thought the movie Semi-Pro with Will Ferrell had a very, very similar plot. First of all, you have a character who's both the coach and the player. Mm-hmm. You have it take place in a city that's not doing well financially. they want to change the location of the team, and it ends up at the end of the movie that they end up doing that. It followed a lot of the same beats as semi-pro.
And just overall, the whole we're gonna stop focusing on winning and start focusing on entertainment. And I will say semi-pro is more of like a ha-ha comedy. Like you see all of the players in like these goofy mascot costumes dancing.
5, 6, 7, 8, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and turn like you mean it. Arch that back, baby. I like it. Woo! Good rotation, beautiful seahorses. Leg kick, Scootsy, nice. And freeze it.
I like that movie, actually.
Yeah, I actually like that movie too. Paul Newman is one of those actors, you see him on screen, and it's impossible not to love him. Just his eyes. He has like beautiful blue eyes, and his smile. He's like we don't get those nowadays as much. He's a nice, manly movie star.
Manly, yeah. He does make some great salad vinaigrettes.
For years, you've seen Paul Newman undressing. Now you can see Paul Newman dressing. Burger King introduces Newman's own all-natural salad dressings.
I talked about how much I love the Hanson brothers. Like, a close second would be Fig Newman's character, Reggie Dunlap. So I really, really liked him in this movie.
Those were our thoughts. Real quick, let's jump into hockey talk.
Right.
What team is going to be the biggest surprise this season?
Biggest surprise. I mean, I'm going to be biased and say my Montreal Canadiens, but I don't know if it's a surprise because they've been hyped up so much all off-season with their transactions and their additions. Let me think, surprise. I like the Rangers. I think the Rangers can make a splash. They're in a really hard division. It's sort of a long shot for them to make the playoffs, but they have some really, really good talent. I think they have the deepest prospect pool in the NHL, whether it be Kako, Lafreniere, Kravtsov, D'Angelo on defense. I mean, so many good players. And all of the movie fans are sleeping now.
Yeah.
But
So,
I think the Rangers.
Let's wrap this up. Real quick, give a score out of maybe like 10 or 5 or whatever you want to do.
This is going to upset you probably, and some people out there that are really diehard fans of the movie. I can't go past the 6.5.
All right, we're not that far apart.
Yeah.
I'd give this movie like a 7.
Yeah.
7.5.
But I think I'm a little bit more lenient with scores. Like, I'm not afraid to give 10 out of 10s. You know, I'm not one of those teachers that say, like, you'll never get 100%. I don't give out those. No one's perfect. I hand them out like candy. So a 6.5 for me, it might be slightly worse than a 6.5 for you.
Yeah.
There's a lot for this movie. For me personally, I don't think necessarily aged well. And I think that a lot of the people that liked it sort of have that nostalgia, I guess, when they were younger. And for a newer audience who like have never seen the movie and this is their first time, I don't think I can give more than a 6.5.
You know, I'm not one for remakes at all.
Yeah.
I think this movie could really benefit from a remake. I just want to see a modern movie, but have it take place in the 70s and have it be about hockey and stuff like that, because I think it's such an interesting time period aesthetically. But overall, I still like this movie. I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
It's a really fun culture, hockey culture. It makes for some great entertainment.
I think hockey makes for better sports movies than most sports.
Yeah.
Better than basketball or football, in my opinion. Just because the sport itself is so fast-paced.
Yeah.
And there's fighting, it's violent. It really lends itself well to film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the speed, like you said, there you go.
Yeah, I sneezed.
the speed, like you said, it's probably one of the fastest sports out there. So if the director manages to film the action properly, like was the case with Goon, oh my god, it gives me chills. And also, apart from the action, just like the overall hockey culture, the way players interact with each other, you know, there are little rules, like you're not allowed to step on the logo. I absolutely love that. And for a sport that's not really well known, it's one of the major North American sports, but it's probably at the bottom. I really hope we get more of these movies to introduce more people to it.
So, real quick, can you tell the audience any plugs you have to do or anything?
Well, my only real plug is on YouTube. I'm actually a pianist, and I have a channel called Matt Piano Covers. So if you guys like piano music, I don't know if there's much overlap with this channel. Well, you can check me out. And even if you don't like it, you can just go and drop a sub. It's appreciated.
All right. So on that note, thanks for sticking around. I hope you have a great start to the NHL season.